Welcome to the VAudio workshop. I'll go through some of the things you can do with VAudio. It will be very basic. There will be a more advanced workshop later in the week by Wisp, who does stuff with multi-channel and spatialization and stuff. So this is just very basic. How do you get sound in 4V and how can you have a little fun doing that? So, huh? Okay, there's a USB stick going around with the audio pack in it. And as I said, don't worry about the instance noodle pack because that was a glitch. Someone typed it in there. I don't know who. So first of all, I can introduce myself. I am Sune on the forum. I'm Sunep, and I do projects with, among other things, audio from time to time, and I use vvvv a lot. And I think the reason that I was asked to do this workshop is that I find a lot of the bugs in it. So that's my main contribution to this, is basically using it a lot and then finding into the weird corners of it. And
my name is Felipe Sanchez, and I'm co-founder of Klinklang Klong, based in Berlin. Audio programmer, sound designer, and I've been working a lot with not V4 but Maximus P, programming a lot of engines. And I just jumped in last minute for I don't know who was your co-host.
that was Lasse.
No, the one before. Exactly, and I was just invited here to bring a little bit another perspective on the V4 audio engine and see what is possible and where can we develop the whole thing also. So yes, that's it.
Yeah, and you've also been you know about 4V a lot.
Of
because
course,
you work a lot with Schnelle Bunte Bilder.
Exactly, we are working a lot with the communication with V4 and Maximus P, making some audio visual kind of content. So that's a lot of connections there.
Yeah. So, but let's jump right into it. Do you guys know what digital audio is in the very simple overview thing as compared to analog audio? Complete silence. But let's pretend this is an analog waveform. Audio, when you have a microphone, the membrane vibrates and it generates an electrical signal, and you can visualize it a bit like this. It could be part of a sound wave. When we turn it into digital, we need to sample it. So basically what we do is at regular interval, we measure the voltage coming out from the microphone, and we do that at very regular intervals. So that would look something like this. And the distinction is not too interesting, but it's just important to realize that this is basically quantized samples, and there's one sample that's a point in time measured there. And yeah, I think that's enough of audio stuff. I mean, the important thing to note is that a typical audio sample rate, for instance on a CD, is 44,100. There are other sample rates. The things I will show you now goes for all of them in different versions. The higher sample rate you have, the higher frequencies you can represent. So that's the main difference. And sometimes you need high fidelity, and then you can go with a very high sample rate, and sometimes you don't really need it, then you can go with a lower sample rate and use less data. But the main thing is that the audio sample rate is much, much higher than the sample rate you typically run in 4V, which is normally, for instance, around 60 frames per second, locked by a renderer. And that can have some consequences when you have these two worlds combining. And I'll just really quickly show you a consequence of this. This tiny little patch here that you probably can't see because, oh, I can do this, then you can see this thing out here. Can you all see this window? Or I'll need to put it in there, and I'll take this one here.
Would you like to use this magnifier thingy that Windows has? They did yesterday, it worked great.
Okay, how do I do it?
I would type magnifier and search.
Magni.
Never use
Magnifier. Me neither. So let's find out. Plus. So far it's not working very well. Oh, there, something happened there. Escape, oh, there. Magnify, that's perhaps a little bit too much. There. That's about right. Okay, so what you often do when you're doing audio is that we'll get to patching in a moment, is that you do these sweeps to do where you sweep the frequency. So here we have an LFO going into a map so that we go from 50 to 1 kilohertz or 1000 hertz. Goes into the oscillator that is set to a sawtooth, and it sounds like this. So that's how you expect it to sound. It's basically the frequency going linearly up from 50 hertz to 1000 hertz. If we look down here, you can see the frame rate of the patch is 60 hertz. And what I used over here are LFO VAudio, it's map VAudio, and it's oscillator VAudio. Over here we have oscillator VAudio, we have map, but that's just the regular value, so that's the 4V version of map, and the same thing with the LFO. So this sounds like this. Can you hear a difference? Let me lower the frame rate. So now we are at 10 frames per second. So now we have, that's the VAudio thing, and then we have the 4V frame rate now updating at 10 frames per second. So one frame rate you might actually run into quite often is 30 frames per second, and you have this thing, and that's simply because it's the update of the change to the frequency is much slower than the audio frame rate. And one of the really cool things about VAudio is that it runs it in its own thread, so it's not affected unless when it's communicating with the 4V main loop patch. Oh, it's confusing, this thing. So the simplest thing we can do is to play back an audio file, and let's look at how we do that, and I'll try and go back in here. So normally we use this thing called a file stream on regular VVV to play video files or audio files, and there is the file stream VAudio. It works pretty much like another file stream. We need a file, of course, file name, whoops, there, and I found this on the internet. One thing I forgot to mention is that over here, I need to get used to this magnifier here. Over here, we have the audio engine in this main patch. You need the audio engine at all times. That is basically what plays it, and you need to show the driver. And for this, you need an ASIO driver. You can't use the regular driver by itself. So either you need an ASIO interface. I lost my luggage, so I have my fancy audio interface is somewhere in Berlin, I think, in the airport. Who knows? But basically you need to have an ASIO driver. If you don't have an ASIO sound card, you can use what's called ASIO for all, or you can use a thing called Dante Via, which is clever in many ways, can also do network audio. But for now I'm using ASIO for all because it's a little easier to just get it to work like this. Then it has a play button, and we have audio out. We need an audio output, VAudio. And one thing that's a clever thing to do is to not have it full. Or we can have it here at the volume of it. So very simple, let's set it to 0.1 just to make sure that we don't die from the very loud thing. And let's see, loop starting. So basically my theory is that if we press play, then we will play the arm and break. Of course, the arm and break is much cooler when it loops. So, VAudio introduces some filters and stuff so that you can actually process this audio. Sometimes it can be just super practical. If you have a system that doesn't have very much bass response, then you can filter out bass from it, or you can there are some simple filters. We can have, let's say, fill or filter. So you have filter VAudio, and if it goes into here, what we'll hear is that it's completely silent. And here you will see something that some of the VAudio notes has, is they have a frequency, and you can see that it's an audio signal, and it has a obviously resonance, but then it has cutoff offset, which should probably be frequency offset, and resonance offset. And you can see these are regular values in 4V. And basically what these two different types of input allows us to is, as you saw before, if we run in 4V main loop, we get this weird low frame rate resolution for audio. So we can have actually having the frequency of the filter being modified by an audio signal. For those into modular synthesizers, it's a bit like basically patching around with these patch cords that you can have audio do control signals. But sometimes we don't really need that. We can just have we just need a fixed frequency, so we can just set the fixed frequency. And by default it's 0, which means that since the type is set to low pass, which means that it passes lower frequency than, in this case, 0 hertz, which means nothing comes out, so we can raise it. There's a really slow thing. Oh, that's where the magnifier is weird. But let's say we go to 100 hertz, or 10 hertz. 100. Could I get someone to close the door? I can go to 200. Or we can have just the easy way here in 4V is to have an LFO do it, and then we do it over 5 seconds, just to have it not match with the beat. Map from, let's say, 50 to 2000. So now you can filter stuff in 4V. And with the filter, you don't really hear this slow frame rate that much, at least not at 60 frames per second. Let's say you want to play this file 3 times on top of each other. Then of course these notes are spreadable. There are some bugs in this which you will notice in a moment, but oh, sorry. I'm not used to this magnifying thing. Let's say we go 3 rows. So we can basically take the same file and played 3 times on top of each other, but I'm quite certain it's not doing that, so I'm saving this right now and then reload. Can you hear if it's...
Should be much louder actually.
Yeah.
It is much louder.
Yeah.
It's playing the 3 of them.
Let's go to 15,000 then. And we can... Now you can see we have 3 of the same file, so I can basically just... Ah, interesting. Of course this shouldn't happen. Let's see what happens when we do like this. Okay, so I actually made this document here. This I'll get through this later. This is being recorded, so I don't have to note it. But basically, I'm pretty sure this will be fixed. You can... What happened now? Yeah. Okay, this is one of the things that I've noticed that is weird. Sometimes, for instance, here we are looping, but we did not define an end loop time. And that somewhat works, but not quite. So now I've defined that the end of the loop is the duration of the loop. So now it actually works. Sorry, I got a little confused over this, but the point is that you can play back audio files, it's spreadable, and what you noticed here is also that the filter is also spreadable, so you just input 6 stereo tracks and or 6 mono tracks, and then you basically get 6 filters automatically. And the filter is, of course, also spreadable, so we could have, I think we can do like this. I'm really nervous that it might not work. So we can have 3 types of filters. So we can have low pass, high pass, and band pass. Do you know what these types of filters mean?
What's band pass?
Band pass, that's basically a low pass and a high pass filter combined, so that you what you get is what is between the two frequencies, or around a center frequency. So instead of having just low frequency or just high frequency, you have a band of frequencies that you can. So we can do something like this, and then we. Of course, now that I think this has the same problem. How annoying. This would have been a good question for Tornfilm, who should be here now. Yeah, but basically that's playing back audio and filtering it. You can of course also do simple stuff like yeah.
Does it always make the filter spreadable? Like make a spread of the filter if you input 3 audio streams to it?
Yes.
So what if you only want one filter?
If you just want, I mean, you can. So the question I think is, do you always have to work with the spread? And then, well, no, you can mix it together. For instance, there is a. For instance, if you'd like just to have a stereo filter just for stereo, so you have the same stereo filter for all 3, then you can use the stereo mixer. Oh. And like this, then you can see, then you get the output. You have a gain which is spreadable, so you can gain each of them to whatever. And you have a pan that you can also pan differently.
And you only combine one, you only connect one line even though you're working with most channels, like on the left and right signal?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, and the gamma is just there to have the fader curved for the panning. And in this case you only have, why do we have 3? Oh, now we have 3 filters because I'm actually generating 3 filters here. So if I, that's the thing about spreads, that it will generate the number of whatever comes through it. 2 audio filters like this. So and now I can hear it's raised down. Yeah. Yep. So yes, so good question, and that leads us into the next thing, I think, because quite often what you want to do is that you'd like to use the very nice VST compressor you have to compress your sound to make it sound really, really good. So what you do there is that you make a VST host, and you take the file name, open it up here, and I have some installed here. The important thing about VST is that you remember that you need to have the same architecture as your 4V version. So if you're running 64-bit 4V, then you can only run 64-bit VSTs, and if you're running 32-bit 4V, you can only run 32-bit VSTs. I think there are some things with VST bridges and stuff that can do some tricks, but I
don't recommend it.
I've heard, yeah, you won't recommend it, so don't do that. So where vvvv for VST plugins, and here I have Dynamics. We have M compressor. There's this Melder Productions. They have a really nice free VST bundle with loads of different types of compression and things. And it also has, what I'm using it for the most is a VST recorder, because it works really well. So now it should go through here. That's going through, and then if I right click, like on all other 4V ways, then you right click and you get a window here. And now I'm not super tight in compressors, but we should be able to play with it, so you can hear that it's actually doing something. I just gain, release, super fast. Pretty sure. Like, this is probably horrible compression, but and then you can see, you can take this parameter here and then you can press expose, and then it's basically exposed to here. Then you have the gain here, and then you can actually control the parameters from inside 4V. Let's say we didn't mix everything down into stereo, so we had, let's say we didn't mix everything down into stereo, so we actually had, instead of stereo, then we had 6 mono tracks or 3 stereo tracks. So I'll just move the stereo mixer out of the way. Do it here. You can hear it.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't have the VST host. Do you have a special plugin? Or?
Do you have the
Audio pack
installed?
Probably not.
Okay, you need that. There's a USB. My USB stick is around there somewhere with it on, and you need to put it in the packs folder of your 4V installation.
And where do you find that file?
This one?
For the, yeah.
Well,
VST host?
yeah. Just a second. This, you go to Melder Production.
This is a company, they have very nice free plugins. You don't have to pay for them, and you can use them in Windows or Mac, and they're very cool actually.
Yeah, there's price here, but under effects they have this category called free plugins, and then basically you say I like the M flanger, and then you can get it with M free effects bundle, and then you free download, and then you download it and install it, and it's free, and then you, in the installer, you can choose which ones you want. So it's, I can recommend it. Yeah, but what you need to notice now that we have, but this works with any. I just took a compressor just for example. Perhaps it's a more fun one would be some distortion or something. Distortion. M-bit fun, that sounds like fun. I don't know what it does. But what you need to notice here is that we have the 3 or 6 audio tracks here. I need to make it big again. We have 6 audio tracks here, 6 audio tracks here, 6 audio tracks here, and 6 audio tracks here. Which up here we have 3 VST host plugins. They operate on stereo, so basically you just get more stereo plugins, and you can actually adjust them differently and have different user interface for them. So you can, like we did before, we had the, I think it was the gain. You can have dry, wet, and expose that as well. Oh, that was input gain. Expose. You basically just take the parameter, tweak the parameter, and then you press expose, and then you have it in 4V. XOR, rotate, oh, it's enabled. So I think this will... Ah, yeah. Replace. I don't know what this plugin does, but which was
And the input gain is very low.
input gain, yeah. Now it's doing something. So but notice this is only the first one being processed. No, that's the second one being processed. Two bits. So you can see up here I have you can go 0, 1, 2. But the first one is still unaffected. And we can get here and expose the bits as well. We expose those. Defaults, global, let's say. Of course, you need to map these. These are normalized, so and spreadable. So, did you get that? I will go out here. So, to recap, when you play audio files, you can play them in FileStream. FileStream eats multiple audio files, and it plays MP3s as well. It plays WAV files. I know those. I think it plays more files. But anyway, try and then if it doesn't play, convert it to WAV. That works every time.
I think also IF.
Yeah. You can filter the audio, and you can use VST plugins. And you can also mix down audios, tracks to have fewer tracks. I mean, if you run 6 tracks like this, or multiple tracks that you do, then in your, unfortunately I can't define multiple channels here, output, because we only have stereo out. But basically in the audio engine setup, you can have desired input channels. You can also have desired output channels, which means that you say, now I only use 2 stereo output, but you could also have 4 if you're doing quad or something like that. And then you can have a channel offset in your audio out, which means that you can say, if you have 8 outputs, then I'd like to have these 6 tracks being from track 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you can do that with the audio out. If there are more channels coming into, in this case we have only defined 2 output channels, then the spreading makes sure that you basically just double them back on each other. So if it's an even number, then left is left and right is right. You had a question?
How do you work on a mono stream? Like then you have to unpack this stereo stream?
Depending on how you want to do it.
Let's say I wanted to have a filter which was different from left channel and right channel.
Yeah, a filter that was different for left channel and right channel. Then you would, for instance, say, then you would just spread the filter. You could go, say, cut off, just let's say it has different frequency on each channel. Then you would basically spread the filter frequency input of the filter, and then say, I want left channel to be at 500 hertz and right channel to be at 10 kilohertz. So you never break the spread. Side note, Les is usually a max dude. So this is super weird. Yeah. But I think we are. Any questions so far? You seem very puzzled.
Me?
Yeah.
I think I just need to actually interact with it.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
This was really, really quick. Perhaps we should give you some time to patch playback an audio. I don't have to give you an audio file, I guess, but make something that plays an audio file and filter around with it for a while, and then in, let's say, 20 minutes, then we return and go back into doing other stuff with audio. And yeah.
I have a question. What is the difference between 2 years ago it was the same workshop like this about VAudio.
Mm-hmm.
Is it some difference
I need to.
from this package?
There is some difference. Now would like Tonefilm to be here. He could explain the exact differences, but there are no major differences between 2 years ago and this year. I mean, it's basically the same. There are some tweaks, but
Basically, what actually happened that last 2 years, at least I know it from Tevian, he has been really going deep into the notes and trying to get working very fine, and also the filters are working much better.
yeah. And one thing I completely forgot. There's a very big thing that actually happens, and I didn't have time to actually get into it yet, so that's why that's not part of the workshop. VAudio is now also in VL, which means that all this thing about the frame rate that I just said, you can just run it at the frame that the correct frame rate inside VL without worrying too much about it. But that's a big subject, and I think the only one who could do this workshop is Tebian. Yeah. But that would be a different workshop. This is still sort of the basic thing, how it works in conventional traditional 4V. So
Is it now more stable when it was alpha version?
yes, I'd say it's. Are you talking about VL or VAudio? VL, I think it's pretty stable. Yeah, a lot of the notes you have in regular vvvv now are in VL, but you should talk to some of the vvvv group about that. I'm not the right person to ask just about that. Yeah, so take a file, play it back, filter it. If you have VST plugins, try and put a VST filter in it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 20 minutes.
And does the audio engine need to be configured in some special way, or is it just install AVIO for all and go?
Usually install Asia for all and then go. I mean, if it could also be that, yeah. So basically you have Asia for all here, and you can just download the first one. install it, and then once it's running, then you get this control panel. Oops, I'll just magnify it again. You get this control panel down here that you can, oh, that's because it's, I really need to get used to this magnifying glass. So you can see you have Intel display audio here. In this case, that's because I'm going through the recording device and into the projector. So, but you will probably use something called, like in my case, it will be Realtek, which is the built-in sound card in your laptop.
Yeah, so basically the first thing you want to do is to set up your audio engine and set which sample rate you want to have, which is ASIO do you want to have, how much channels, and from there on you just can start building your file player.
Did you install
Yeah, a little bit. It's good. Spreads are beautiful. You know this kind of patching 48 channels in Max?
Yeah.
Like 48.
Yeah, but it is quite cool. It's just
Yes.
very different.
It's a very different thing to think.
But that's very, of course, it's very nice that you have to.
On the other hand, I'm completely used to see everything. It's file stream VAudio.
But I didn't understand this thing with the, like now the filters spread it, but there's only one thing saying you passing, like in the filter type.
Yeah, you have the filter type, but you have just one filter type, that's a low pass.
There's no pass for both
Low pass, but you have the frequency of the low pass, you spread it, so you have for the first channel one frequency or the other frequency, but you have the same type. If you spread the type, then you will have the first and the second differently. So that's a little bit. So it's, as long as you don't spread, you will both at the same time.
here? So, or for the Max guys, audio guys, you can think about spreading a bit like a MIDI cable or something like that. That you have tons of channels in the same connection.
Exactly.
But you don't have to use it.
Of course, in one point you can use just get the spread and really visually get the spread. But that will be before not.
The cool thing about the spread is that you don't have to make more connections than one machine.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's also nice, like with this, like at least with this thing.
Oh, one thing that you need to remember that you make a audio.
Take 2 weeks.
The player? Yeah. Yes. Let's go like. Whoop. So we go like. Something like that. Too small? Up. This is weird.
That's your audio engine. I have to set it up first.
The first thing you need to know, everything is running on this now.
Yeah.
But when you get the sound roll, the sound might. So if you put this one, this is not just not on.
Yeah. That explains it all. I just missed that because it was.
Restart work.
Restart work, yeah.
Yeah, well, depending on what you do, either everything, sometimes you apply, because the effect sometimes you need to
Sonst sind prinzipiell alle fertig und wir haben dann
Something that really would be able to build
that's where I keep my
like kind of like the extreme ones with the solo. So also just like building smaller sequence. I sent it to this room for issue different
Sorry, can you
Nee, nee, es muss schon längst ballern.
all this audio parties before we switch it up?
Not so much forward. That's not
You don't have to use it. For example, this synthesizing. Maybe
Some of them.
Spaceship, Sci-Fi, Anime,
That's the thing you don't know. Sometimes it's difficult, I noticed. You have installed Vision for a while. Did you restart the computer after you installed it?
Yeah, already.
sites, il speak about this one, their production. You have 2 or 3 resources. Lights, and a lot of controls, and you can have access to each parameter in the name of the website is Mega Productions. Mega, not media.
I'd say that since we're doing so much here, and if you look sort of next door later, I think you will get the ideas of the menu when you get home. You actually administrator account. But I think also for some of the other workshops,
Yeah, no, I'm gonna try that. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's the audio account makes sound really rich.
Everybody's still doing the sample.
So that's your
Yeah, but I think we need to go back. We've been a bit more than 20 minutes now.
It's not just run. You just the first thing is
Should we continue, or are you? Yeah. I can show you an example I made, and I can. Yes.
Just troubleshooting issue with virtual machine and all driver ads. What did I do wrong? Install.
I just go here and then magic hands and then whoop.
As desired.
I can recommend did you restart after the installation?
Yeah, it first we go for both.
Windows. You,
Windows and
you install
I have to.
Mac to
I do it. So I also restart.
okay. So there's power under the table. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. Or are people? Do you have sound coming out of your computers more or less, except for you without administrator passwords? Did you actually get sound, or did you just was it just able to pick it right? Just the very simple example to test whether or not you have sound is to not make this super complicated thing. But to make this audio engine, and then you start the audio engine, and then you have an audio out, And remember, it needs to be of the VAudio type. And then you can make an oscillator, OSC, and then you can basically just connect it, and then you should have a beep in one channel. Yeah, someone else have that tone. So if this is working, then you have VAudio working. So yeah, is it a question or? Okay, you can hear it.
Affirmation. It works.
Rocking, yeah. So I heard, first of all, I heard something talking about audio analysis. How can we get information about the audio out? And then I heard someone saying drum machine, because apparently you should have a drum machine. But since, do you want to borrow some headphones? But since 4V is basically a tool for programming, you need to make the drum machine yourself if you want a drum machine, or use a VST drum machine. So that's not really, the point of 4V is not really to make an audio machine. Do you have a question?
It was just an addition to that. It would be very interesting to see how you work with time, say making like a very simple MIDI sequences.
Yeah. Where to go from here? I think I can use the synthesis and then rename that to something different. I'll give you these. I'll make sure that this material here will make it to whatever repository is available after tonight, or it will be either today or tomorrow. I'll make sure that it is somewhere where it's accessible. Really quickly, I'll do the analysis very quickly, because that's relatively simple, and it's already there in the regular vvvv that you have FFT, and it's relatively basic what you can do. You can do FFT. So if we have our file stream, okay, I'll turn on the magnifying glass. File stream, VAudio, and let's go with our Arm break from before. Just have one of them. There, play, and there's a tip. You can have the duration here. You can basically copy that into the loop end time. That makes it easier for it to remember that, and then we set it to loop, like that. So now we have a looping file. We can, this might be loud, oops, not that one, audio, that one. So now we should, and then we'd like to have, for instance, a spectral analysis of this. So we can do FFT, the audio goes in here, and the main interesting thing is to have the buffer size here. Gives you a spread out.
Which one was it? The audio sync?
Hmm?
Which one was it? The FFT, the audio sync?
Yes, there's just one FFT. The other one is called IFFT, inverse FFT. So you need that one here. And then basically the super quick, dirty way to do this is to make one of these, have 256 columns, and show
Slider.
slider there, show slider and not show value, and then have minimum to be, let's say, 0 and maximum be 1. So there you have basically the FFT, and it's sampling 256 FFT bands. I'll just mute. It samples, gives you 200 and it uses a block of 256 samples, and that gives you back, as you can see you have 2 copies of this. Oh no, that's because it's stereo. Yeah, and then you get half of this as your FF spectral analysis, which means if you have a buffer size of 256, you get 128 values out. We get double that because it's stereo. So I'll see unzip. Do we have VAudio? Unzip. Now you can see we can use unzip to just get one audio signal. Then you can see we only have 128 values out. And that's basically because when you do an FFT analysis, you get the result is a mirror. So where the first half equals the second half. So you only need the first half. Right. The second half is actually the first half mirror, so it's the first half. So if you want more, then you can just have a bigger buffer size, and then you get finer resolution. So that's how you could do one spectrum
again?
for FFT.
No, for the human, for the sliders.
Ah, yeah, sure. For the slider, the important ones are you have, in this case, 256 columns, and set minimum and maximum to 0 and 1, and don't show value but show slider, then you get this. And of course you can render this in fancy ways, but we don't really need, this is audio, so we don't need to make fancy graphics, at least not now.
So maybe for those who doesn't know what an FFT is,
Yeah.
we have like our frequency range is from 20 to 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So what we're doing there is to dividing this frequency range into 256
yeah.
values. So we have this range divided in 26 values, and we have the volume of each of these bands in this FFT. So we can have this graphic. So that's what a FTT does.
It would be a bit like if you have 256 very narrow filters and then measure the level of that. So this is basically the old spectrum analyzer from the old days. Okay. Time and stuff. What's that? And drum machines. Let's make a new one. There. Regarding the essential part of a drum machine is basically what's called a step sequencer. But before we get there, then we need to make, for instance, a kick drum. We can use an oscillator for doing stuff like that. I muted this. I just need to stop that one. And we have audio out. And we can select. I'll just select 2 of these just to have. Basically what select does, if for those of you who don't know, so now it should be in both speakers. bit, like that. And then I can change the, whoops. Wow, it's really weird having the magnifier there. Okay, the frequency to something 10 Hertz is very low. But 100 Hertz, you should be able to hear that. This is more comfortable. So basically the way a, let's say no 100 Hertz, let's say, what is good thumb kick is 80?
80?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds... Okay, so this might be a cool thing, a bass, and we could play bass lines or something with this if we wanted. But if we want to make a kick drum, then we need to have the volume on this go high very fast and then slowly go to low. Slowly is 100 milliseconds or something like that. So first of all, so the way we can do this is that we can multiply the signal, and we have down here VAudio. No, it's, I think it's default one. Yeah, so a lot of the notes in 4V default, they don't do anything. So, and what we can do is we can take what's called an envelope of putting it. So basically an envelope describes how something develops over time. And I don't have anything to draw. So let's say we do, I can do this and then I can do that. So basically, let's say this is your coordinate system. I'm doing this in a really weird way. So you have what's called an attack, then you have a decay time, then you have a sustain, and then you have a release. Oh, that, oh, reader. Okay, like this, you have attack, decay, sustain, and release.
So that's the volume of the...
Yeah, so this is the volume.
Time.
Yeah. So over time you have something, and this mic could be, let's say a second, then it uses the, when you, and think about keyboards. So you have a musical keyboard that you press down the note, and then from here to here might be in time, might be how many, 30 milliseconds or something like that. So it goes up relatively quickly. And then if you hold down the key, then it goes down over another period of time to this level, which is called the sustain level. Now it's tilting downward a little bit, but it should be constant. And this level is held as long as you hold the key. And then when you release the key, then it fades out slowly over this time here. So you have attack, decay, sustain, and release. Those are the important things. So attack, decay, sustain, release, or ADSR. So you have, we already have ADSR envelopes in 4V, but now we want to use the VAudio source because, like you saw earlier with the frame rate of 4V, this doing stuff over 30 milliseconds, that's only 2 frames in 4V, so that will sound like chiptune music. So here we have trigger input. It needs an audio signal. For now, I will make a very quick trigger by doing a bang. Goes into a monoflop. I suspect you know what this does. By default, when I click the bang, the monoflops holds it for, in this case, 1 second. It's just to have some time for it to be held. And then I need to, the trigger input here is an audio signal. So I need to translate the Boolean value from the monoflop into an audio signal. That's done using V2A, value to audio, which goes here. And then you have an audio out. And then if we can't really look at the signal very much. By default, the attack, I'll move this here. By default, the attack is 0.1, that's in seconds. Decay is also 0.1. Sustain is also 0.1. Let's put that to 0.5. And I don't really know what slope does now, but release is 0.5. That's half a second. And then you have minimum and maximum, which is very useful. So basically the minimum should be 0, because that's what, then there's no sound coming through, and the maximum should be 1. So what we have here, and we can then take A to V to translate the audio signal into something we can see. So when I press this, you can see it goes up to a half, stays there, and then goes out. Attack, decay, sustain, yeah. So, and we can take this and then put this into multiply. Now you can hear the sound went away, so we can. This is a bit too. I can also up the volume here. It needs.
Just make it attack 0.
Attack 0.
Attack 0, yeah. And then I shouldn't hold it that long, so I'll hold it for 0.3 seconds. Get a real click here because I'm not triggering the waveform. I'd like to have just a little bit of attack. That's not too bad.
Well, you can still a little bit down with the
Yeah,
frequency.
but now you have the synthesis guy telling about that we need to do stuff with the frequency. But we also want to do the same thing to the frequency of. Now you can hear this is a kick, but it's a quite boring kick. Usually what you do is that you have a high frequency and then it goes. That's when you make a kick, so high frequency quickly going down to a low frequency. That's what makes the sound more kick-like. And we're just playing it at constant 80 Hertz. So we can make another of these. Oops, I'll just remove this, doesn't matter. Another one of these. That we duplicate. And for now we can just use the same values, except for the minimum, which should be, in this case, 80 Hertz. That's the frequency we'd like to end at, and then it could go to perhaps 200. Let's see what that sounds like. Then we put that into the frequency input, and then we set the offset frequency to 0. You get something like this probably need a bit more decay. Perhaps not 150, I don't know. Oh, not 15. Not 1500. 150. Sustain can be, decay can be like that. So already now you get to, I won't make a really, really good sounding kick drum right now. It is possible to make something that sounds better than this, and you can also filter the sound using the filter so that the filter goes along with it to make it sound even cooler. But what I can do is that we have a step sequencer. So now we have, this is how to work over time with just one hit, musical hit. But music consists of more than one hit, so we want to make more hits. So step sequencer. So there is a VAudio step sequencer, and it basically, I think I even made, you can hear there's some drum stuff here. So yeah, that's actually one of the VAudio notes that has a help file. I'll just move this bit down. So basically we'd like to have this trick, the stuff coming out of it. There we go. So we have the easy way to make a sequencer is to have a toggle like this, and then we make it 16 columns because we do very rhythmic music, put it to calls, rows and pages, and then to have a typical 4 to the floor beat, it looks like this. So this is our sequence. Step length, values, bin size, that looks right. So basically I think this should run. I think sequence out. This is very convincing, I know. Position, sequence. Why does this work? It is just running.
Do you know if you can get MIDI text? Like, are there MIDI implementations?
There is MIDI in it. I won't cover MIDI too much now, but yeah, you can get MIDI, but you would need to filter that and do that yourself for now. But there's a new cool VL implementation of MIDI that is actually tight, which is really nice. So you can do.
The step sequencer, is it available, comes with the add-on pack, or I have to get it?
It's in the VAudio pack.
The VAudio pack, so I have to get it. It's not
But you have the VAudio pack because you're in this workshop. So,
It came a little bit late.
so yeah. Now I am struggling to find out position. Why doesn't that change? Bin size, sequence.
What kind of input was it? Is it
Which, just a second. Step, just a second. Which one?
this one, yeah.
This is just a regular. You right double click and make a toggle,
Yeah.
and then you go to the inspector and then
yeah.
say
16.
I want to have 16 columns.
Yeah.
And then you need to make sure that it's set to calls, rows and pages mode. And then you have them here, and then you basically just makes it longer. Come on, you should behave nice. Position value. Yeah. For whatever reason, you need to have an audio engine in the same sub patch as this, which is a bit weird, but it works. So, and then for this, you can actually, there is this nice Bjorklund contribution, which is a VL contribution where you can say number of pulses, and then we duplicate that. So we have number of pulses, let's say start by 16, and then we have sequence length 16, number of pulses 7. Then you can see we have weird Euclidean beats, and you can change the number of them. If you want to create interesting rhythms all by yourself without actually knowing what you're doing, just like I do, at least when it comes to music, then this Björklund node is quite cool for doing interesting stuff. And you can see this is also spreadable, so now you have, in this case, bin size 16, but we could also make, we can use this as bin size, and then we can spread actually both of these. So we can say, now we'll do some very, some not very complicated, but polyrhythm stuff here. So now we can have 16. So now you have two rhythms running out of sync. So that's, and one is 14 beats long and the other one is 16 beats long. So, and this actually generates down here 2 audio out, which means that it makes 2 triggers into the 2 envelopes. So we have 2 oscillators, and we can then don't need, now we have, so there should be one rhythm over there and another one over there. I will make them more easy to distinguish by.
You set the attack to 0, then you can hear the click when you hear it.
Yeah. Ah, this is cool. So, click hop or something. So, yeah. So this is a way you ask for a drum machine, there is a drum machine. You just have to make the drums yourself. And while we are at this, we can, I'd like to show you the acid machine, an example I made last year, or not for last node. Looks like this. Oh, and I need to. It doesn't sound very good, but so if we take the drums first, this I spent a little more time making that kick drum, and it's, I actually think there is a node called drum machine now that looks like this inside, and it also has a snare or a hi-hat snare like thing, but then I also made a synthesizer because it's fun. And you can see I made a sequence generator that can generate music. So you can do that, and then it's panning around at different rates.
Maybe just something to mention maybe is the BPM, that you control the BPM, the velocity of your sequence.
Yeah, the BPM. If you want to change the tempo on these sequences, there are some sequences, then you need to change the tempo of the main audio engine. And so you can say it doesn't transition very elegantly, but apparently like this, in this case it was fun. Oh. Yeah, that was a glitch in losing the connection to there. So, no, I think, and then record again. So, yeah, I think it was fun to go down.
That's a very nice thing.
I mean, it's not supposed to do like this, but it's kind of cool. Well, so I will put the add-on machine in, acid machine in, along with the rest of the patches I did here. So that was the question about the drum machine and the drum machine and also about step sequences. Would you like to have 20 minutes again to play around with step sequences and drums?
Can you maybe do MIDI or something like that?
Yes. It can. I would like not to go too deep into MIDI today. Of course, I need to just a second. I'd like to not go too deep into MIDI today because it's more about the audio synthesis, but basically yes, it can do MIDI. And if you look here, you have some MIDI, some VAudio MIDI nodes that run in the audio thread, so everything is tied. I've not yet myself dug too deep into that yet. So that's also why I'm not so comfortable showing you how it works. So I haven't used those MIDI nodes too much yet. But please dig into them. I mean, will work. So yeah, I won't dig into MIDI other than say it's there. Play around with it, test it. Yeah, but then I think I would like to give you some time to actually try to make your own step sequence. I will keep this on screen. Here we can have this over there. And then you can, whoops. Yeah, and then I can go around and help you. So should we say 20 minutes again? That will probably run into half an hour, but if we say half an hour, it'll run into 40 minutes. So let's say 20 minutes. So that's 12:05. And yeah, make some killer beats.
Where will you put the files later to?
Hmm?
Where will you put the files of the workshop later?
I don't know where. I think I can get the emails of everyone participating. So I will make sure that you know somehow, but keep an eye out on the forum. I mean, usually after Node there will be this thing where everything collected, and there will be this collective site where all the content from each workshop is collected. So there will be one organized one, and then during Node there will be this disorganized Samba share, which is on the network, or some USB sticks going around. I can give you what I have here now, and then I'll clean it up in the time following. So, yeah, drum machines.
I didn't even hear it.
You're going, why isn't it working? Well, noise cancelling headphones actually demonstrate
Working very well.
So, anyway.
When you go to shift level, going around, you get around to the exhibition.
You need the select button. You know? So you can select and you go from the one mono to the two channels. You need to he deselected because he has now stereo channel.
This is the VAudio.
Let the select make the mono into the two.
So I
Go there and then.
when I put one, it's okay. Two.
Yeah.
capture all this, as you saw, I had trouble getting the sequence to actually run. But you need to press Ctrl R to reload the patch. Make sure you have saved your patch before you do that, and then it'll run. I will think I'll use the time to actually record. Doing something like this, we would like to trigger the waveform. The way it works is basically it runs every time. So basically you turn it on. This is actually you could put it on here. You have this here. Perhaps if you have a better sound card or something, try that.
The issue with the audio driver, because I have some hearing when you listen to it, some crackling, so I'm not sure it's a bit great or whether I said no beginning. Maybe it's because of visualization versus
yeah, but I'm disabling that. I suppose you're
maybe that's the issue.
Yeah.
Probably not close to me.
Yeah. I mean, going with 4V and stuff, especially, I mean, 4V is really quite quickly using fast interface to graphics card and audio.
So latency.
Yeah, but you have this thing behind it. I had so much trouble when I ran Hyper-V. For stuff I had to test in network stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went out to do my regular visual fields. Also, I had connected the projector, and in the when we go to see the monitors, it showed I think it was 7 monitors, and I had known what virtual machines running. And none of them were the projector. So I had to disable uninstall. So
Yeah.
I-
Well,
I-
for today it's totally fine.
Yeah.
I don't worry about it because normally I just have it because I have a different machine.
But you're not using boot camp.
No, I just use the
But you boot camp, then it's actually running on the hardware.
Yeah.
You can imagine we have our human range is basically at 6-7 kilohertz, and 30
now I'd show you. Did you get further on making your drum machine and played around with it a bit? Or silence? You need more time for this, or? The question is if we should continue doing other stuff with audio.
Yeah.
Cool. So this oh yeah, there is just really briefly, and you don't have to patch it. Could I get you to close? We need the air, so yeah, we need the door open. No, but we just leave the door open because it gives us air. Okay, so one very short. The next thing I have on the program is called data to audio, and there are many ways of doing data to audio. One way I find quite funny is to basically take raw data and use it as an oscillator or waveform. So I'd like to point your attention to what's called the wavetable node. Go in here. The wavetable is a bit like the oscillator, where in the oscillator you can, if you take OSC, then you have, oops, where is it? Waveform, there, waveform. You have sine wave, triangle, square, sawtooth, white noise, and pink noise. And that's fine. But wavetable is a bit like the oscillator, but instead of having a sine wave or a sawtooth, you basically make your own waveform, and then it's being used as a waveform. That's called wavetable synthesis. And you can do many things with this. You can just make cool sounding oscillators, but what I have done is basically to put not meaningful audio data into it and then change the data, the wavetable, to make sound. So one thing we can do is we can have audio out. I'll take the stereo mixer just to, apparently I can't spell stereo. And we have block, frequency. It's interesting. And table bin size. So can start by making a random spread. We'd like to have, let's say, 256 random values, and we put that into the wavetable. Doesn't sound very well, so let's go to 80. Gain down a bit here, 0.1. So here the idea is that you can, anyone not knowing random spread what it does, it generates a spread of random values. So basically, and this, the input, it's basically the values goes between plus and minus half when the input is 0. So yeah, we can actually visualize again with the IO box. Let's do that. First slider, show value, -1, 1. There. Real. I need columns 2, 5, 6. There. So this is basically just noise. And if we change it, the noise, we can do that by changing the seed. So I can hear it's repeating. And if we do it really quick, then we get noise. And you can do this to this audio. We could also get it nice and then resample it. Then have spread count. It basically takes a spread of a lot of values, and then it says we want the same data, but it should be, in this case, in a quarter of the samples. It would actually work better the other way. If we take 64 random samples and multiply that by this is totally unnecessary complication I'm doing here. So it is yeah. Forget about this resample, it's just confusing now. Yeah, but the basic thing is that you can have, in this case, random values, but you could also have, to make a renderer, take that there, and then we say what? This is the most boring patch ever, but bear with me. I'll make a quad that rotates. Y. There, and then we'll rotate it like this. So now we have a rotating quad. I will mute this for a while, but then now you saw, now we just made random numbers. We could of course make nice sine waves and stuff, but that's boring, so we don't. But what we can do here is that we can actually take this renderer and turn it into a texture, and then we can use pivot. And I'm using DX9 just so that everyone has it working. So, and you all, I guess you all know what we get from pivot, which is, let's say 64. So now we only have one slice of 64, but we could here go and say linear spread, and say we do 64 of these. And now I need to remember this is the old pivot. That needs to be 0 to 1. Okay. So this needs to be here 0.5, like this. And X and Y. Y needs to be 0.5. So now we are basically sampling a line, horizontal line in the middle of this renderer. You see that? So now we can take RGB, for instance, color split, and then split that color into values, and then for instance the red channel. Now you can see we have something that resembles what we had before with the random one. So we can take this, actually take this and then put this into the wavetable. Let's take all this and move it down here. And it sounds like this. And then you can of course spread the phase of this. I will perhaps make this. And we've removed the sample every sample. So now we take the image that we're just generating and turning that into sound. And this is one example I'd like to show you is from, was it last year? For the reason I have these on my laptop. We have, you know, the Eurovision Song Contest. And in Denmark it's called Melodi Grand Prix. And then there's this thing called modulated Grand Prix in Denmark, where Lasse actually won. And I came in number 2. Yeah, he had the most friends there. But the basic idea is that you take the sound or the signal from the Eurovision Song Contest at the finals, and then we were, I think, 8 musicians, so we got 3 countries each. And then you basically have to modulate the signal coming from the Eurovision live, and then the one who does the best original music, most popular music wins. And what I did was this. I have it here. Same concept. I think I need to close this. I'll save this, don't worry. Come back to that. Yeah. So I have a touch screen, so you can see the line here represents the line of pixels I'm feeding. So you can have quite a lot of fun doing that. And finding the interesting parts that have. And can you believe I only came in second? Yeah. So this was Belgium. Yeah, I have another project. It is a bit slow, and in Riga, I don't know if any of you know Riga, there's a river called Daugava, and they had this buoy sitting in the water, and for 2.5 months it recorded the orientation. Actually, I don't know how often it recorded it of this buoy. So so they had all this data, and they had thought of this as a record needle put into the river. So by doing this, and now I made this in a quite silly way, so it is a bit slow. Record. We already have it here, so I need to restart it. and what is happening? I think I need to kill it, because the thing is, it was parsing the whole file, which I did in a stupid way, so it's really, really slow. But I can see that I have it in an IO box, so I don't have to parse it again. So I think this thing is the X and the Y measurement from the river in Riga some years ago. Once 4V starts. Did I break something now? No. I didn't. Just kill the VST. Yes. I have 1.8 million samples, so I think if we go here, do that. That's what goes on. There's a really good example here that is not working. Switch, wavetable. Oh dang. Ah, yeah, of course I need to pick the right one, and then we should have sound. There is something. Okay. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to sound like. Ah, cool. I just couldn't hear it. So 0.01. This is what it sounded like. And the cool thing is that they had thought of this as a record needle in the river. And when you actually played back the sound, it sounded a bit like the bad inner groove. And then you have these funky noises coming. So you can actually have and this I think also you can hear sometimes there's a storm or something, but it's so this way you can actually, for those of you who like doing data visualization, you can actually do data sonifications by just playing the data. I mean, it's you don't have to, don't necessarily have to do fancy, complicated stuff to do it. And I kind of like the sound of this. And there were 6 of the, I think they had 10 or 12 parameters, and I think there were 6 of them that were interesting. Simple, like that. So yeah, and that's basically just putting a very, very big wavetable into the wavetable synthesizer, or the wavetable node.
Would you then record it?
Huh?
Or what would you do with the sound? Record it further to get it processed, or is it just for the joy of?
No, I mean this was I was there for a completely different workshop and performance, And then they said, oh, we have this project where we have this data, and they thought about making it into sound. And then they gave me the data, and then I can also share the data with you, so you can play around with it if you want to. I have been allowed to do that. But it was quite interesting to just take the data and then see what does it sound like. And it does somehow sound a bit like water or something. Yeah. Yeah. So.
If you would like to record it, you just put a file writer under the
Well,
audio on?
yes. If you notice this, it had a VST host here, and this is also it's not random that I pointed you to the Melder production. The writer node in VAudio is really bad and sucks. Don't use it. So what you do here, and I can show you on. I'll just quit this for now. If we go here like this, and then we want to say, for instance, this here thing. Then can you mute it completely? If we want to record this, then the way I would recommend doing it is using what's called the VST plugin called M Recorder, and it's in Melder production, and it is both 32 and 64-bit. It's very good. Now there's no there we go, file name, and still go to program files, VST plugins, Melder productions, tools, I think, and then M Recorder, and it looks like this. Oh, of course, there. We have it here. This is the M Recorder. Bit of a bug in the window sizing, but basically you make a path here for where you want to save the file and what file format. Usually 16-bit is enough for most things, but you'd like to do 24 or 32, you can do it. And then you basically just press record, and you can expose these knobs to 4V, so you can actually press record from inside 4V. And I tried, it should be able to record up to 16 channels into one WAV file. I didn't succeed in doing more than stereo, but you can of course spread this node as well, so you can record into multiple, and you can even, I think you can even expose the path, so you can change the path to where you save from inside 4V. So use that instead of the audio writer node.
Can you use the recorded file immediately after you record it in the
No. No, that's one thing we've been talking about, making much more powerful buffers in 4V, where you can record into a buffer and then perhaps save that as a file later if you wanted, and import a file into a buffer. But currently, no. There is a
possibility to get the path after it's being saved, or
yeah, of course you can get the path. I mean, you could just do, I think, expose. Didn't that expose that one? No. Oh, no. Apparently you can't do that. But you should go and talk to Tibian and then say, we want a proper writer, and then get him to make it. Yeah, I'd like to show you some more examples of what you can do with this thing, and perhaps also some examples of what you have done. I think the time, we have half an hour, so it's good time to do this. One of the things that is very recent is that you do that. And this is also one of the changes from last node. This doo-doo, am I doing that sound? Nope,
You're
okay,
actually
good.
mute.
Was that it was really difficult to get the audio from a video into VAudio. But now Lev has made the HAP codec player, and I'll just basically show the example file that he has in the thread. It's not yet a contribution. You can get it from inside the there's a forum thread about decent HAP codec playback. For those of you who don't really know a HAP codec, everyone knows what HAP is? And okay, you know about, for instance, QuickTime films and stuff like that, and or not QuickTime, but H.264 and compressed video that you get from a camera or something. It works by having keyframes, and then you calculate the frames between keyframes from the keyframes, which means that if you're jumping around the file, it is super slow, and sometimes it breaks apart. What has been the best way to play back audio file where you needed to jump in 4V so far has been to use the player notes, where you made a PNG sequence, or even better, a DDS sequence, where DDS is an image format that can be decoded in the graphics card. So you can send the compressed file to the graphics card, and then the graphics card does all the dirty work. But then you would need to play the audio separate to that and make sure that it was synchronized, and that was a bit annoying. HAP is a video codec that is basically having a stream of DDS files into a video file with audio sync built in, so you don't have to do all that yourself. And it works. There's a renderer here. Let's see. Oops, open. Yeah. Oh. Perhaps I need to press play. Yeah, you can see it. It's here. And make this. And this is not coincidental that I show this. Now I need sound again. This is from one of my projects where I sampled the image just like I showed you in the previous example. What I do is that I take the pixels along this diagonal and use that as the audio waveform, just like I showed you. The difference here is that I use the green channel as left, and the red channel as right. It's just from there. There's no audio processing other than I have a high pass filter to cut off the low end. That's I mean, audio goes above and below 0, but the base color in this video is black, which means that if I made black 0, I would only have content above 0.
Hi.
Hi.
May I steal 2 minutes of your time? At
Okay.
this point?
Can I just finish what
Of
I'm
course,
saying,
of
and then,
course.
you can have 2 minutes? Yeah, so and that's basically called a DC offset, where you can spend a lot of energy in bass speakers and stuff by having it push the membrane out there and then vibrates out here instead of having it going back and forth. So to avoid that, I put a high pass filter on it, and that's the only audio processing that is, besides having the pipet into the wavetable node set at, I think, a very, very low C, and then the rest is just that. And that was also a demonstration of that. You can see the HAP codec actually works. It was a HAP encoded file. So just pretty quick. Yeah. Now you can have 2 minutes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll try to keep it short. My name is Niklas, and I'm working for Nasal, a company which some of you might know. It's kind of a birthplace of vvvv, and also the Node headquarters there. And we are having a reception tomorrow evening at 6, from 6 to 8, where we want to invite everybody who's interested for green drinks and other hope-related green stuff. And also, if you want to have a look at the office, it might be interesting. Also, we are currently looking for skilled people in several type of professions. So, if you're interested in any way, you're welcome to meet tomorrow evening at 5:30 at the info counter in Naxoshalle, where we can then go over to our office, have some drinks, and have a chat with our CEOs and stuff. And there's quite a good chance that you can be back here for Marshmallow Laser Feast if anybody's interested. So if you have any further questions, you're happy to just contact me. I'll also leave these here for more information. Thank you for your attention, and please.
I can highly recommend going. They're very nice people, and I remember the first time I was there, you served eggs with green sauce. Do you do that now that the theme is green?
The robot thing or the one before?
It was before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think I wasn't there last time, but the time before that, there was a robot thing that you could get sausages and bread, and then you had this robot arm put mayonnaise and ketchup and mustard on it, and then you could choose between patterns
We're
and stuff.
actually using the same pumps again.
Okay.
From this last robot thing.
Is
So-
there still a robot?
I guess so, yeah. I read something, I'm not totally involved in that
Okay.
because I'm busy with other stuff, but there's a quite good chance that you can see robots, and I think also Apple Lisa is alive again, so might be interested for some of you. But I don't want to interrupt you further. Thanks
Okay.
for your attention, bye, see you soon.
Bye. Yeah, go there if you can. And it sounded like they were hunting for people to work for them. So if you need a job,
Go for it.
go for it. Yeah, I think perhaps now we have 20 minutes left, and I think
Sorry, one more question. Where's this
Yeah.
nice video coming from?
the nice video, it's coming from, if you want to see it, then you go to, I have too many windows, tabs open in my Chrome browser, which is the one I usually use. You go to vimeo.com, and I'm glad you like it. Oops. And you search for my name. Oops. And then there's a lot of stuff, but if you click on people, then that's me. I'm the only one with an image. And then it's there. You can also just copy this. And you can
That looks like something generated, which is then again passed and used to generate sounds. So this
no.
over-
It, there's just one pass. I mean, this is generated. I mean, I've been doing visuals for many years now, and what I like to work with is a lot with texture feedback, video feedback, and the reason I began doing this, taking the image and putting it into sound, was actually at this workshop at last Node. Tonefilm showed this example where I think it was, I don't know who, but made an installation with a projection onto some triangles and stuff. It was black and white, and it was flickering a lot, and they asked him to do some sound for it. And then he basically just made that thing with a line through the video, and it sounded amazing and fit the image completely. So I was like, that's cool, it would be fun to be able to make sounds that goes like that, and with, now I'm going in detouring a little bit. I have these Sublink films, but I also have this AV performance called Deuterium, and this is from this is not the best performance, but it's another app is controlled. No shit. Save all and close, like that. This is a recording from